This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
What's up, Bob? How you doing today? Happy Thursday.
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right. Trying to just slough off yesterday's 11-4 loss to Little Rock. I don't know what you take away from that game other than it was just an ugly game, and that's going to happen. I know that, and the one thing that might worry me a little bit is that there has been, and it's been maybe once every couple of weeks, there's been a game that gets away from the Arkansas baseball team, whether an opponent just smacks the ball around like we saw Alabama do or TCU or yesterday. I mean, Little Rock smacked the ball around, but what they took advantage of were Arkansas mistakes in the field, and that's really what got the game out of hand. So, I mean, maybe that's one thing to take from yesterday is 1 out of every 8 or 9 games, there's been a game that's kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Arkansas had a lot of issues. I covered the 21-5 game Tom Murphy covered yesterday. I listened to you and Bubba while I was working on some Anthony Black stuff. And, it just sounded, obviously they weren't playing their usual lineup, and they had actual, plays that were credited as errors, and they just had missed plays. So they gave, Arkansas Little Rock way too many outs, just like, too many walks. Free passes, just like the Trojans did for the Razorbacks. I thought Dave Van Horn summed it up pretty good after the game when he said something like, they gave Arkansas, this is paraphrasing, but they gave Arkansas a lot of help, the night before, and Arkansas gave them a lot of help yesterday. And but I think UALR's got a solid team. I'm not saying they're as good as Arkansas, obviously. They're not, but if you're Arkansas and ULR, I mean, your focus is on the weekend. They both got big series. ULR, I think, is playing Eastern Illinois, who came in here and beat Arkansas once. They're a good program, and Arkansas's got Tennessee. So, I think it was Bubba said you flushed that game yesterday and you get ready. And really the big thing and probably on everybody's mind should be is Jared Wagner going to be able to play? That's really the big come out of this series, I'd say.
Yeah, you're right about that. Guys, I got a funny text from Bob when I was out in the hog pen on Tuesday. You didn't have to worry about a second-inning stretch yesterday because the first inning took like 12 minutes. You had a 50-minute first inning on Tuesday, and as the second inning is about to start, Bob texts me from the press box. I'm out on the hog pen. He's like, man, we need a second-inning stretch. I thought that was a good one. It was it made me chuckle out there for a moment there, Bob. Yeah. So you wrote about Anthony Black. Obviously, no surprise. That he declares for the draft, and now it's just a matter of where it is he goes, who he goes to. There's a lot to work with there, and the one thing you gotta, and this can improve. It will improve with him because I know he works on it. Is the jump shot? Outside of that, this is an outstanding pro prospect, and he's unique for the position he plays.
Oh yeah, anybody that had any illusions that Anthony Black was, the fact he didn't announce, for the draft 2 weeks ago or whatever, right after the season. I mean, he was never coming back, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, he signed, as did Nick Smith and a lot of guys around the country, top players, with the idea of being a one-and-done player. Now, then you've obviously got to go out there and prove that you're worthy of that, and he did. If anything, he enhanced his stock. I mean, preseason, I think I'd see him maybe top 20, 15, 13, whatever. Well, now and we'll have to wait and see. It's going to depend on workouts and how the draft shakes out with the lottery and all that. But and trades and whatever. But he, everybody's projects him now as like a 7-8 pick. He really helped himself with all the things he showed he could do. I mean, he can score, he can rebound, he gets assists, he plays good defense. He had too many turnovers, I'll tell you that, but he was also a 19-year-old kid. Part of the season, I think he was 18. I'm not quite sure when his birthday is, but very young kid. And, losing Trevor Brazil early in the season like they did, not having Nick Smith there for half the year, and then Nick being in and out of the lineup. I mean, the one constant they really – and other guys were in the slumps. Anthony had a couple of bad games like anybody would, even that talented. But, Anthony Black was, to me, by far the most valuable player, the most consistent player. He led the SEC. Not just Arkansas, he led the SEC in minutes played just under 35 minutes a game, And so, to me, he just had a phenomenal year for a freshman, and I hope, well, as much as I understand fans would love to have him back, I hope they appreciate what he did and we'll wish him the best because, everything sets up for him to have a really long, successful NBA career.
Yeah, I really just watched the Razorbacks play basketball. I didn't see three other better talented players in the conference. I know Brandon Miller, they're different players. He's a 6'9" guard that can shoot it. He was pretty good. But I think Anthony Black's going to be a star, and whatever team gets him, he's still 3 years away, I think, before playing meaningful NBA minutes. But, get up there, get it going. And he's going to be okay. He's super talented. What have you heard anything on Nick Smith or Ricky Council, kind of where they are in the draft?
Yeah, I think Nick, and like I say, so much of this is going to depend on, assuming they go to the combine. And a player like Anthony, even a player like Nick, they might, a lot of times might say, well, you don't, you go to the combine, you do your interviews, you don't need the scrimmage or whatever. Ricky Council, a good combine could probably really help his stock. But, a lot of this is going to depend. Those doctors for all the teams are going to go over, Nick Smith's knee and every part of his body with a fine-tooth comb. They do that with every player with, the investment. Now, I'm sure you remember what that was like at the NFL Combine, where they probably told you.
It's a long day. Yep, it's a long day.
Or something. And so, but yeah, I think, the being hurt and having some up and down games. Obviously Nick didn't have a good NCAA tournament. We know that. He struggled. He had 11 points against UConn, which wasn't bad, but, if you look at his stats and, towards the end of the year, they weren't that good. But I think people understand he was coming off missing a lot of time, probably was anxious, probably was pressing. So we'll see what happens in workouts. But, yeah, I see Nick. He maybe went, because before the season you saw he was 4 or 5. It would be a surprise if he goes that high based on what I'm reading, and I'm no expert, obviously, but probably maybe top 20, top 15. Ricky Council, I saw one, I think it was NBC Sports that had him like right at the end of literally the last pick of the first round. But I'm seeing mostly in there in that between like 40 and 50, so the end of the second round. And I saw Jordan Walsh, who has not declared for the draft. I've seen him in a couple mock drafts late second round. And Devo Davis, who's declared for the draft, but very intelligently is not, is maintaining his eligibility. I have not seen Devo listed in any drafts. But, if he gets invited to the combine, that would be great, and he can work out. And, teams can pay to bring him in for workouts and these things. And, he can certainly get an assessment of where he's at. And if he hears something he likes, he can always stay in the draft. But right now, Devo doesn't look like a draft pick. Right now, it looks like Anthony Black, top 10, Nick probably top 20, and Ricky Council probably, early to mid-second rounder. But a lot of it just depends on how their workouts go and if they go to the combine, how that works out for them, how their interviews is. So there's so many variables now. But obviously those guys all have the talent to play in the NBA.
Walsh is the one we're waiting on now. And, he put out a tweet just kind of thanking people when the tournament was over. And that was like 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything since. And so there's no surprise that Nick declared, that Black declared. And like you talked about with Devo, he's left his options open. Jordan Walsh, who knows what he's going to decide to do here, because he was a 5-star, and there were some that thought he might be a first-round pick when he got here to Arkansas. I think that's pretty evident he's not right now, but if he's popping up on some draft boards, maybe that's still something that he views as an option ahead of the draft. But that's the last piece of the quote unquote returning puzzle for this team. I don't have a feel of what it is he's going to think to do. What do you think, Bob?
Well, and of course, don't forget about Mekhi Mitchell. We know Mikel's twin brother is in the portal, and those two guys have been, they're twins, and they've been everywhere together, whether it was high school, Maryland, Rhode Island, or Arkansas. But maybe, Mekhi wants. I'd love to hear the conversations between the players and the coaching staff. But yeah, with Jordan, I haven't talked to him about this, but to me, it makes sense to declare for the draft to keep your options open, and if you get invited to the combine, that's a great experience to go through. So so if you do decide to come back to Arkansas, or for any player, if he decides to come back to college, then he's gone through that experience. He kind of knows the ropes, and you get great feedback. You can go do some workouts. They might tell you, what, we love, your attitude. We love your wingspan. you got to work on, your jumper, and you need to continue to play great defense, but not foul so much. You got to just be a little smarter. And if you do these things and hit your 3-point better and, improve and listen to Muss and the coaches, man, you're going to be a first-round draft pick next year. Or maybe they're telling them, we love your athleticism, we love your ceiling, and, you're going to be picked somewhere late in the second round. So it really just depends on I certainly believe, Jordan Walsh has the athleticism and the drive and all that to play in the NBA. It's just a question of if he came back and had a really good year, I think he would be a pretty high pick and he'd make a lot more money. But, you just don't know where somebody's head's at if they are just bound and determined, I want to get my pro career going. But with NIL, to me, you're making good money, certainly in a place like Arkansas. So I guess selfishly, just because I think he's a good kid to cover and he's maybe make Arkansas better. Selfishly, I'd love to keep covering Jordan Walsh for another season. But I can see both sides of it. You say, wow, they're going to – and here's another thing to consider. It's just maybe a minor thing. There's normally 60 picks in the draft, two rounds of 30. There's only going to be 58 picks this year because the Bulls and somebody else had to forfeit a second-round pick for tampering. I don't know what they did, but there's only going to be 58 picks. And, of course, only the top 30, the first-round guys, are guaranteed. But still, if it's important to you, hey, I want to be drafted, well, there's going to be 2 less guys picked this year. And, of course, you got to factor in all the European players and Australians, all the foreign players. So, the draft can be a bit of a crapshoot. People can look and say, oh, well, that guy should be drafted, but you just don't know. But I guess getting back to the original thought, I could definitely see Jordan declaring, but if he did, I would hope that he would keep his options open.
Appears to me, the way that the roster gets built by Muss, you can't have enough of any certain position. So whether or not Mekhi Mitchell decides to come back, does this team need another big man? And when I'm talking about a big man, like you look at some of the players that they've contacted, and maybe everybody wants these kind of guys. Dickinson from Michigan, one of the best centers in the country. Edwards out of Syracuse. So looking at a couple of 7-footers, if they decide to come to Arkansas, I'm sure that'd be great. Does this team need right now a true center? I know Bay Fall plays the position, but I also don't know if they'd be ready to entrust that position necessarily to a true freshman and expect him to get out there and play 30 minutes a game. Does this team need a real center right now to come out of the portal?
Well, and of course, we're putting Trevor Brazile back into the mix. And of course, he's not a true center. They basically were playing him in a small forward spot. That they were grooming him. And man, what a luxury to have. You have a 6'10", a guy who can shoot the ball and protect the rim and run the floor, and you can put him at a small forward. But you look at Eric, sometimes 6'4" Devo Davis, if they had foul issues or injuries or something, he might play power forward. But, hey, if you could pick up Hunter Dickinson or somebody like that, I mean, who wouldn't want that? So obviously that'd be awesome for Arkansas. But I feel like the way the roster's constructed, obviously they're very perimeter-oriented, and it's a perimeter-oriented game now, I think, in college more than ever. Bay Fall, I'm not super familiar with this game. I didn't see him play in high school or anything, but I think he's obviously got a huge ceiling. But I think he's probably more of an impact guy on the defensive end, at least early, probably kind of raw offensively, but he's certainly a guy that can really help on defense. And then we'll see how the offensive game develops. But, yeah, if they could get another big guy, I think that'd be great for him. But I don't feel like, well, if they don't get Hunter Dickinson, then they're screwed or something like that. But I think if Mekhi Mitchell comes back, I thought he had a nice season. Jalen Graham, obviously a strong offensive player, but he needs to develop some other things. Before we talked about him, so I think if you can get Hunter Dickinson, obviously you do that in a second. But I don't know if they have to get another big guy. If Mekhi leaves, then I think they need to. Well, they obviously want to fill that scholarship, and they probably want a big body. But I really like how the roster sets up right now. I love all the interchangeable parts on the perimeter they have. To just keep playing up and down like they want to, and getting Trevor Brazile back. That's like getting a huge guy out of the portal. Because you think about it, it's almost like getting a new player because he played so little last year because of the injury.
Yeah, I think if Brazil's healthy next year, he's going to be a lottery pick. I really believe that if he keeps continuing with his game and he can be healthy, that's just as Bob. I agree with you. That's just as big as any get right there. Having Brazile come back if he's healthy.
Yeah, and he seems ahead of schedule on the rehab. I mean, just watched him a little bit during the SEC and the NCAA tournament. You know, the practices are open a little bit, and he'd be out there shooting, and obviously not ready to play. I didn't talk to him about, you know, his plans, but I know some of the other beat guys did. And I think he was saying, you know, maybe, you know, attitude-wise, he felt like he was ready to play. Obviously, physically, he needs to do more rehab, but it looks like he'll be back sooner rather than later. So hopefully he'd be ready to play when the season opens in November instead of having to wait till, you know, mid-December, late December, some. But, yeah, his rehab seems ahead of schedule. And, you know, the comments from Eric about how he, even when he, you know, obviously couldn't do stuff on the knee, he was lifting weights. I mean, he was doing that, you know, really quickly after the surgery. So he seems like he's had a really good attitude mentally and you know, is anxious to get back and isn't feeling sorry for himself. I'm thankful I'm certainly not an athlete. I never had an ACL tear, but you know, I've talked to enough guys to know that's a really tough injury. And, you know, sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere, you know, this week or that week, and you wonder why I'm doing all this work, and then, you know, I'm not progressing. But you sort of have to take the long view of things. But it sounds like Trevin's had a great attitude and has really been working hard. So hopefully he'll come back, you know, a bit better than ever. And I agree, if he comes back and has the kind of season he's capable of, then, you know, he's a first-round pick in my mind.
Get analysis of every play, prop, and point at BetOnline. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. That's BLEAV. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts.